Nice, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. True Pricing Symposium. I'm super happy that you are all here, that you could make it today on this Monday to join us for the next 2.5 hours. We have a very nice program that we put together, all on true pricing. So I'm not going to say too much about what true pricing is, because we have presenters that will dig a little bit deeper into the topic. Let me introduce myself first. So my name is Karina Türdl. I'm an assistant professor of marketing at the Amsterdam Business School at the University of Amsterdam. And together with my colleague Sjoukje Goldman from the HWA, and also with Jan-Willem Bolderdijk, who's in the audience, and Jesse Weltefrede is also, right here. We put together this nice little symposium on true pricing. Can tell you a little bit about how this project came along. It all kind of happened very organically. I know you've been working on true pricing for quite some time. You have the true pricing lab at the HWA. And I, at the same time, was working with one of my master students on true pricing. I got approached by Sjoukje and Jesse because Willemijn, also a colleague from our department, knew that we were both working on the same topic, so she connected us and we started a project together. And then Jan-Willem, coincidentally, also was interested in the topic of true pricing, suggested to set up a symposium, so we all teamed up together to make today happen. And we got some very nice speakers, as well as panelists from various backgrounds. Super excited to also hear your take on true pricing a little bit later. Is there anything you would like to say? Okay. I'll quickly walk you through the program. So the short welcome is basically being done by us. Maurits Apeldoorn's presentation from the True Price Foundation is following, so you will get a full overview of what true pricing is, what the benefits of true pricing are, how it can potentially change how we approach externalities that are being caused in our economies. Then we have some research evidence. So as I said, we've been working on a project together, which includes one field experiment that we ran at the HWA. It is still running, actually. We also conducted some online experiments, so we will present those insights after we get a little bit of an introduction on true pricing. After that, we have a presentation by Eva van der Broek, also on true pricing, some research insights, and our final presentation will be done by Martin Reinings. He's the founder of the first true pricing supermarket, De Aanzet, which is here in Amsterdam in the Pipe, so we get some practical insights on that as well. Later we have a panel discussion with 5 very interesting panelists. We have Thijs Matti present, Ariane van Mankius, who's the founder of the first True Pricing Cafe. We have Peter van Dam, he's a historian at the UvA, and Gustav Hahn, I think he's also here in the audience already, philosopher, and I think that's a nice mix of people who can give their opinion and insights into the topic. Are there any questions for us, or is everybody ready to start the program with Maurits's presentation? Yeah? Okay. Yes.
I'll be taking some pictures. If you're not okay with your picture being shared, please let me know. Just talk to me or send me an email.
Yeah.
The second thing is, if you're still hungry during the breaks, there's some fruit and vegetables and some small sandwiches at the back.
Yes. We will also have some catering coming in later. So after the presentations have wrapped up, we have some snacks and some drinks waiting for you. And snacks and drinks will also come throughout the breaks. So we make sure that everybody is well fed. Thank you, Jan-Willem, for taking care of that as well. Okay, here's a clicker for you. I'm
Great.
super much looking forward to your presentation. And it's basically just coming after,
Yes.
this one.
All right. Thank you very much, Karina, for the introduction. My name is Maurits Apeldoorn. I work at a social enterprise based here in Amsterdam called True Price. and I think most of you will immediately understand what we are doing. We were founded around 12 years ago, and super happy that nowadays, on a random Monday afternoon, the concept of true pricing brings in so many people to here to the University of Amsterdam, which is also a bit of a special occasion for myself, because not too long ago, I actually studied here. So I visited this venue quite often, and also went to the headquarters right next to this building a couple of times to occupy it, but that's a different story. And I always, it was a small dream to be here up on stage, and now it's reality, so happy about that. And the question that we are talking about today is if true pricing is a game changer or a consumer deterrent to meaningful action. And I don't want to make this awkward or uncomfortable, but maybe this is not entirely the right question. Because this question focuses a lot on one specific thing of true pricing, which is the consumer context. While true pricing can be so much more. And I would also like to tell you a little bit about that and how I look at true pricing after working at this organization for almost 6 years. But first, I was also asked to just give an introduction about true pricing and what a true price is. And I see some familiar faces in this room, so you have seen this before. But for the people who don't know a lot about true pricing, this is a starter introduction. And I tend to explain this quite often based on an example. Imagine that after a long day of work, you come home, and on the side of the street next to your house, you see your neighbor's kids, and with a true VVD entrepreneurial spirit, they started a little lemonade shop. Which is amazing, because you came home from work, long day of work, you are tired, maybe it's even warm, it's in the summer. So what would you like to have? A fresh glass of lemonade. So you buy a glass of lemonade and you take it inside into your house and you go to the backyard to enjoy the evening sun. And then all of a sudden, what do you see? All of a sudden, out of the blue, the peels of the lemons are flying over the fence. The lemonade shop is throwing its trash into your garden. And now you might think, why is this relevant? I guess from a simple human moral perspective, this is unkind, it's unrespectful. But let's put on our economic glasses for a while and look at it from an economic perspective. Because what actually is happening is quite interesting. There was a company, the lemonade shop. They had trash, waste. They needed to process that. But instead of taking all the costs to process it, they basically decided to literally throw it over the fence to you. In economic terms, this means that these costs, at least partly, have shifted to you. This company has externalized parts of these costs. Because now, well, at the very least, you have to go to your neighbor and say, look, I like the shop, but this is not correct, right? At least you have to spend a little bit of time. And now you probably still think, what is this guy talking about? This is not why I took my Monday afternoon off. But a harsh and tragic reality, I think, in our current modern global economy is that this happens every day, every second, every time we buy something. This is what companies do. I would like to make a bold statement. This is the very essence of what companies do in a capitalist economy. If you buy a t-shirt, somewhere around there, H&M, Zara, you name it, we know that the production, the cultivation and processing of cotton for that t-shirt has costed enormous amounts of water, which is in itself a sad thing. But what is happening is that therefore local communities in China, in India, their access to water is decreasing. These companies are pumping out the water of the lakes, of the river, of the ground. Therefore, the local communities have to walk further, dig deeper, or sometimes even buy plastic bottled water. This is a real example. This is not hypothetical. And basically what it shows is that through our production and consumption, the costs for water use have been shifted from one company to people who are not responsible for it. Same goes if we buy simple food like an innocent cucumber in the Netherlands in a Dutch supermarket. The tragic reality is that through a long value chain, this in the end contributes, although it's a tiny, tiny bit, it contributes to child labor somewhere else in the world. Because we all use, and farmers as well, we use materials, we use minerals that in the end are partly traced back to mines in the Central African Republic. We all have our mobile phones. We all know that this is happening. And of course, a hamburger. Who doesn't like a hamburger? Well, I do. But we know that most cows in the Netherlands are also fed with soy, most of which comes from the Amazon rainforest. So the tragic reality is that through our consumption, everything we buy, everything we do, we are externalizing costs. We are externalizing, shifting costs to other people. And we think this is actually one of the biggest problems in our current modern day economy. It's a huge blind spot. Because, how often do we see all of these things? Especially on product level, we almost never see it. And because we don't see it, we don't feel it. Well, we're starting to feel it nowadays with climate change a little bit, but most of the time we don't feel it. Because we don't see it and feel it, this externalization leads to the increasing the growth of these problems, which are now existential threats. And this is what companies, and I don't want to shame companies in itself, but this is what they are really good at. And this is what we allow them to do in a capitalist society. We allow them to internalize their profit as much as possible, beautiful, but externalize all the costs. And on a bigger meta kind of scale, we might think, wow, our market economy is super efficient, right? Yeah, because we leave out, I don't know how many costs we leave out. Enormous amounts of costs we leave out. Yeah, okay, then my company can be profitable as well, for sure. So we're not even efficient as we think, maybe. So that's a bit of a background of true pricing. And then a true price is actually quite a simple concept if you look at it from the first time. Because a true price is basically the normal price of a product that we see and pay in the shop, And then we just simply add all these externalities. So we go through the whole value chain of a product, from the first seed and before to consumptions and beyond. And we look at a huge number of different themes, indicators, impacts, whatever you want to call it, on the social side and the environmental side. And we put a price on it, and there you have the true price. So we look at things like soil, land, and air pollution, the loss of biodiversity, the use of water, which is scarce, on the environmental side. And on the social side, things like child labor, forced labor, underpayment, harassment, health and safety at work, things that we, you and I here in the Netherlands, we don't even think about that. This is all set in rules and policies and law. But somehow, if we then import a product from far away, then we turn a blind eye. And I think this is also a nice perspective to look at it, because the market price nowadays is what we pay for it. And then the true price gap is what others are paying for our product. And this is not hypothetical, this is actually happening. And I want to stress one thing. I think true pricing, in its very essence, is not necessarily about paying. You might assume that because we're talking about prices. It's about information. Because a true price, one way to put it, is a very well-developed, sophisticated, holistic way to measure the sustainability performance of a product beyond payments or consumers or whatever. And that's the idea. We don't say, we're going to calculate true prices and everything becomes more expensive. Shame on you, consumers. No. Why? That's also not sustainable. What we want is that these externalities are decreasing as much as possible. And that whatever externalities there are left, those can be remediated. But it's really about getting the gap to as close as zero as possible. So that's a bit how we look at true price. What is a true price, etc. Now let's dive into the verb true pricing. Working with true prices. We have been working on this with a huge number of organizations for the past, 12 years. It's a growing movement. International corporations, local bakeries, NGOs, governments are stepping in. This is a group that's is growing quite rapidly, and you really feel that the genie is out of the bottle. 6 years ago, when I started, nobody really knew what true pricing was, and well, now on random birthdays, I don't have to explain it again. So that's a good sign. But you see it in the publications around it, in the coverage in national media, but also internationally. Prominent magazines like Forbes and The New Yorker are writing about this. The FAO is publishing about this. So on many different levels, you see that something is brewing and something is growing. And even in the political level, this is becoming a topic. Not really sure if the new Dutch government will also be so invested. But a few months ago, so far the highlight for true pricing in Dutch politics, the minister, I believe, of Economic Affairs announced a true price pilot. Well, unthinkable 5 years ago. But through the great work of many people who are actually here as well, building this castle, this true price castle. We're getting there, bit by bit. So, what is true pricing? I think true pricing is three things. First, it's a crowbar. Secondly, it's a diving board. And thirdly, it's a magnifying glass. Why is it a crowbar? It's a crowbar because based on true price analytics, based on the data, based on the information we see in the projects that we do, with the partners that we have, that we can break open value chains. We can break open conversations. We can break open companies to allow them to think in a different way and enable them to have consistent, reliable, holistic information to make different and more informed choices. And one example that we are currently working on is a project that we are doing with 2 big organic retailers in the Netherlands. And with them, we are looking at how to improve, both on the environmental and social side, the conditions on banana plantations in Peru and Dominican Republic. And these companies, with their supermarkets here, they are not even sure whether they want to communicate anything about this to consumers in their shops. They're not sure, let alone paying the true price. Increasing their banana price, that's very tricky for a supermarket. But still, true price information gives them the opportunity to rethink how they do business. And it freed up financial space, which they can invest in buying water pumps to irrigate their plantations there more efficiently, to buy solar panels so farmers there don't have to use fossil fuels anymore for their pumps, to increase the yield while also increasing the diversity of plants on the field, which also allows their farmers locally to increase their income. And of course, true pricing is not the only thing they need. They need much more than that. But it's one of the ingredients that helps these companies to change and to make these informed decisions. Then, the diving board. We see more and more that true price information is a diving board because it helps organizations to accelerate their ambitions, their activities. And one, I think, really nice example for that is Vermaat, one of the biggest caterers of the Netherlands, who have been a front runner from the start in this topic. And they started with some experiments in restaurants of theirs, seeing like, hey, how does this work? How do people respond to it? And based on that, they decided to incorporate that in their food vision, which is basically their sustainability strategy. And this has helped them this has enabled them to now think differently about, hey, what are we actually putting on this menu? What are we actually serving? So now they're changing recipes. Again, true pricing is definitely not the only source of information you need to make such a change, but it helps. It helps the conversation. It helps to accelerate what they want. And a very tangible example of that is that they will probably change their tuna sandwiches into hybrid tuna sandwiches, decreasing the true price gap of a sandwich by almost 40%. Without any payments, without any communication, they can already do that. And then last but not least, of course, it's also a magnifying glass. It's also a way for consumers, for people who go to restaurants, for students of the HVA nowadays, to see and understand the sustainability performance of a product. And not just see that something is better or worse than the other, but actually understand to which extent is this better than the alternative. I mean, if you look at this example, so we have the vegetable croquette and the beef croquette. Don't touch the croquette of a Dutch person, please. That's thin ice. But this shows something. 30 cents external cost versus 5. That's 6 times more. I mean, probably still a lot of people will take the beef croquette. But it's a seed that you plant. And we can, well, I hope, through different kind of interventions and communication, you can nudge people to more and more make the more sustainable decision, even if you don't pay. I would like to stress that true pricing is not the silver bullet. It's not the answer to all our problems. But, as I hopefully have shown, it is a powerful instrument to help all actors in our economy to make more informed decisions. And we are building a castle, brick by brick, experiment by experiment. Maarten, here in the room, will give a talk later. He was one of the first to put a firm fundament to build a castle on. And together, we're putting it on the agenda. And now it's on the political agenda. So see how far we have already gotten in this few years. So, is it a game changer or consumer deterrent? I think it's much more. And we're only starting. We're only at the start of a true price revolution. So keep calm and start true pricing. Thank you very much. Is there now time for questions?
Yes. Thanks a lot for the very elaborate presentation and helping us all to understand what true pricing really means and beyond the first associations are really going a bit deeper. So I was wondering, you had some issues with sort of how the question was framed. At the introduction, you used that as a hook. But can you elaborate a bit more? Are you also worried that, let's say, that there's now a risk that if true pricing is not sufficiently understood at what it really means for, it's discarded too quickly? Can you basically elaborate on what your worries are on that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I am a bit worried. That's correct, because often I see that in conversations we have, in how people write about it, how people talk about it, it's very much positioned and framed into this consumers have to pay more context, which is understandable if you do projects, experiments where you actually allow consumers to pay a bit more. But there's a big world behind it, which we shouldn't forget. And in the end, I think it's not we should either do this or that. It's a combination of the two things. So yes, we can communicate to consumers. There are consumers who are actually willing to pay a little bit more. But companies and organizations really have to work on their supply chain and decrease their external cost before they're going to do that. And that's, I think, the most powerful story we can have.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Maurits. I'm Rike Meeuws. I'm working for Wageningen Economic Research, and I want to give you the compliments because we more or less see the same in the PPP that we do, and we see exactly what you pointed out in the presentation. That we often call it TCA, so true cost accounting. And that's an instrument that's very helpful for measuring and to inform people. And so I want you to give the compliments because we see more or less the same in the studies and experiments that we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Maurits.
Hi.
A question, because I started before this inflation wave came. And is it not that also inflation is paralyzing now this kind of method? Because people are a bit fed up with paying for everything more. Is that not, hoe zeg je dat, de loop door elkaar heen? Conflicting, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Of course, if prices increase, then the willingness to pay for a true price gap decreases probably. But I think that's also, partly my point. I think payments, actually paying the true price, could be valuable in a very specific situation. And it's really dependent how you position that, how you communicate that. I think the essence of it is way more what are companies doing to prevent externalities. And then if it goes to consumers, can we just help them to make more informed choices instead of increasing their bill? Because, nobody wants to pay more. And I think that's also their right to not necessarily pay more.
I have a question on, in your presentation you said that it freed up financial space in a certain company. So can you elaborate on that? Was there all of a sudden more money for doing good things in the supply chain, or were they willing to accept a lower profit margin, or how did it work?
Good question. I'm not 100% sure to which extent I can share all the details. But one of the things which was interesting, I think, and that I can share, is that through these negotiations, basically, they basically said to each other, look, let's not make a year or half-year contracts, but let's make 3 or 5 year contracts. Because we have a plan together, we have a kind of a joint mission now, and so if a supermarket invests, they want to see the result, and these things take time to change. So through expanding kind of the time period in which they cooperate, they freed up financial space because. Less risky things, less insurances, etc. And that's the space they use now to improve the external costs.
Coming back to the question, Jan Willem's question at the start, and your worry about the misconception that true pricing would increase the cost of products. Did you consider to calculate the true price at the level of the company instead of the level of the individual product? Because that would also help to change the perspective with which we look at the problems. Instead of making it a problem of consumption, then it becomes a problem of production, which it actually is. Did you ever consider that, or do you also do that?
We actually do that. It's a bit through a different method. Our company works on what we call IPNL, which takes into account the externalities on a company level and puts that in a kind of P&L overview. But in that, you also take into account the external profit, so the positive externalities, so to say. So it's a bit of a broader view, and what we are currently also working on, and that's maybe a little bit related or in in the same direction, is that beyond products, we look at portfolios or assortments. So what are the total external costs of a restaurant or of a supermarket as a whole, and how can you decrease the externalities on that level?
And if you calculate external, sorry. Can I follow up on that question? So, and if you also calculate the external profits, then can companies net those with the?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's important. Thank you.
Yeah. That's it, I guess.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Sorry, we thought it would take a bit more time with all the questions, but I think you have an audience with a high knowledge of true price. Usually when we present it, and when I start presenting, I first ask who knows about true price, and then only like 1/3 of the people raise their hand. But I think if you would have done it here, most of you would have already raised your hands. So thank you for the great introduction to the topic, and also showing the lab at the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences. So I'm going to talk you through the results of that research, but these are very preliminary results. We are running the lab for 12 weeks, and we only have data for the first 8 weeks. So these are not results that can communicate it outside already, because we first want to dive deep into the data to check that what we see in the first 8 weeks, we also see in the full 12 weeks. I'm very happy with Ariana being in the room, because actually she was the one who sparked me to introduce the topic within our university, within our research community. She gave a guest lecture, I think about 2 years ago, in the Master Global Sustainable Business Management. And I said to her, I would love to do such a research within our university. She opened the first True Price lab, True Price Cafe in the world, and she will talk about that later. And she told the students, and they're very enthusiastic, also about the concept, also the way as an entrepreneur, how you introduce the concept to the world. And so I talked to my colleagues, and they said, no, we're not going to do any true pricing here on the university. That's not something we're going to do. But slowly we are teaching about it, and at one point a colleague said to me, we really want research that is visible, because we do a lot of research at our applied university, but no one sees it. We write white papers about it or scientific articles, but we really want to make the research on economic transformation visible to the students. So I again said, well, let's do research on true pricing. And I'm also happy with Guido in the room, who was our facility manager, and he said, well, let's do that. And also with Jesse, our professor, who said, let's make it happen. And our Center of Economic Transformation supported us for that. So these are the first results. It's basically a research from the perspective of practice what you preach. We teach about it, so why not show the students how it actually works in practice? Now I need to check the sequence of my slides, because I presented it last week on a scientific conference, but I think it's going well. So as Marit said, it's very challenging once you include the consumers. We don't have the time to put Marit next to the register and give a full presentation each time someone buys a product. Basically, when we buy our food, we are usually in a bit of a hurry. And then it's very, very challenging how to convince the consumer about true pricing, explain the concept, have the consumer trust what is happening, and be transparent about it. And in previous scientific research, we heard these two things are key. So trust and transparency. You need to be very clear why you ask consumers to pay a bit extra. And in our case, in our lab, it's a voluntarily payment. So when the student or staff buys a product that is true priced, then they get the question, which price do you want to pay, the sales price or the true price? So you need to be very clear about the communication about that. So that was the starting point of our research.
how do we do that? Especially when we got some numbers from other research that we saw in survey research, people actually indicate they're quite interested in true pricing, and they say that they're definitely willing to pay it. But in practice, we see that this percentage is much lower. But if transparency is key, then how do you make sure that the consumer actually understands what is happening? So that was the starting point. That's when we started talking about Carina and the research that one of our master students was doing. And then we decided, okay, let's go ahead and let's try to implement this for a period at our university. So actually a long period. We started at the end of February and it's running till the mid of June. And let's focus on the communication. So there's a photo of our banner that our students get to see. Part of the assortment of our restaurant and espresso bar is true priced, and we use a banner to explain it and price tags. I will show a bit more further on. But we incorporate 9 externalities in the true price calculation. So that's the part, and I know that Maurits just showed that they can calculate about up to 22, if I remember the number correctly, but which shows the 9 main ones and to include it in our communication. So it's a field experiment, voluntarily payment. So there's the coffees and the teas are true priced, and 6 sandwiches and 4 snacks. And for the sandwiches and snacks, it's 50% is the vegan option and 50% the non-vegan option that has a true price. Also, to make sure that the students can compare the prices of the products and base their choice on that. So this is what is happening. Every week, we change the price tags of the products. We do this on Monday morning. I know with Tessa, we have been running around with the banners and the price tags and changing it every week. And what you can see is that the degree of transparency increases. So in the first week, we started with condition number 2. There we show the sales price, the true price, and the price gap. So it's not much information, but at least compared to condition 1, which we also use, people don't have to calculate the true price gap themselves. So that was in week 1. In week 2, they got condition 4, which is a very transparent way of communicating all 9 externalities that we included in the calculation of the true price. After that, let me check, then they saw 1 and then they saw 3. And as you can see with 3, we split between the hidden cost, the social hidden cost, and the environmental hidden cost. And condition 1, which is, for those of you who love research, the baseline condition, where we just communicated the sales price and the true price, which actually makes that the consumer has to calculate the price gap themselves. So that is a bit of effort that needs to be done there. And when we talked about what we expect from the results, we sort of assumed that the sweet spot is around condition 3. That maybe condition 4 is too transparent, it's an information overload, but at condition 1, there's information lacking, which you need to make the decision. So somewhere 2 or 3, we thought would be the sweet spot. And then, of course, it's very interesting to see what happens when you see the data. For the researchers in the room, we conducted a logistic regression because we asked in the end, are you willing to pay the true price or not? Or are you willing to pay the true price or the sales price? So it's a yes-no condition. And we added a lot of independent variables that we control for, which, of course, the conditions, which is very important, which condition is working best, and then the control variables to see if there's any other aspects or effects that we need to take into account. And again, these are the first results. Very happy, Jesse, that you were able to get the first 8 weeks of data and to do this so we can show that. But after the summer break, we will give you the full insights that we get from our research. So we have 2 locations in our faculty. It's the economic faculty where we are running this experiment. And the first location is the espresso bar. And you can see on the photo in the background is Mario. And Mario has been with our university for 15 years. So he's our barista. He knows everyone and he knows how you drink your coffee. There's a lot of interaction with him. Students tell their whole story to him. He knows everything. And there's a lot of time waiting for your coffee to be prepared. So there's more time to think about which price you want to pay. You can see the banner. It's a huge banner. We chose the largest size. So there's time to look at it. It's time to think about it. The prices are also in a booklet. This is on the counter. and you can talk with Mario about it, what you want to pay. And then he remembers what you paid, right? So after 2 or 3 weeks, he doesn't even ask everyone anymore. He knows what you want to pay. So what we see from the first results is that actually condition 2, 3, and 4 all seem to work fine, at least better than condition 1. So condition 1 was the condition where you have minimal information, but it doesn't really matter which it was the week with number 2, 3, or 4 in the conditions, at least better than the first one, the basic condition. But we also noticed as time is progressing, which is actually the one called day number, when the experiment was progressing, that actually also has an effect. So we sort of conclude from this that it doesn't really matter what you show, well, at least not the minimum condition, but it doesn't matter of the other 3 conditions which you show, but by the time people come in more often, they have thought about it, they made a decision, that's what they're going to do, and that has actually a slightly negative effect. So people may be enthusiastic in the first week, but by time when the experiment is progressing, they thought, well, I'm not going to do it anymore. But there are also a group of people who will definitely do it. What we also see is that the hour of the day matters. So the early hours and the later hours in the day, the people coming in then, there's a high chance they are willing to pay the true price. When we were thinking about it, we thought maybe that's because there's more staff in our university at those hours than students. And that's actually been confirmed if you see on the second column that Wednesday, the chances are a bit lower. On Wednesday, we have more students than staff in the university, as a lot of staff is working at home on that day. So that might be an explanation of what we see in the results here. But again, those are the first 8 weeks. We still need to add 4 more weeks to see what is happening. We also looked at the price, whether price has an impact if a product is more expensive, or you then may be more or less inclined to pay the true price. And we saw that, well, we took there the sales price and checked that when the prices go up, the willingness to pay, or the chances that someone is willing to pay the true price also goes up. So apparently for the more expensive products, people are, the more expensive coffees, people are more willing to pay the true price. And we also checked for the type of coffee, the regular coffees compared to the special coffees, and apparently there's a high chance for people paying the true price when they order the normal coffee rather than the special coffee. So that's the first location. This is our espresso bar with Mario, the barista. But we have another location, which is quite different, and that's our restaurant. And in the restaurant, you can see people can pick up their sandwiches, their snacks, there is a coffee machine, but that's also all done without any human interaction. So we put price tags very close to the products, so that's a very different decision process. And then in the end, you pay at the register. We have regular staff being there. Most students know them, but they don't know them as well as Roberto, sorry, it's not Mario, it's Roberto. So they don't know them by name. I do hear sometimes students still tell everything to them, but most of them just pay and leave. So it's a much shorter interaction compared to the espresso bar, and you can see that the banner is behind the register, but you're not standing next to it, and you're not standing next to it in line waiting to pay. And I'm explaining this because we think that's also the reason why we see some different results in this location. So what you can see here, again, of course, the conditions are the most interesting to us. And here we see that condition 2 outperforms the other one. So that was the condition where you saw the retail price, the true price gap, and the true price itself. But we don't see that again for 3 and 4. So maybe condition 3 and 4 actually gives too much information if you're more in a hurry. So we call this in a shorter time to decide. You're more in a hurry. You pay less attention to what is happening, and you take less time to decide. And here the day number in the experiment doesn't matter. So of those 8 weeks, it was actually condition 2 who came by twice, who outperformed the other ones. We also checked again for the hours of the day. We're not sure yet what that means, what we see now, so we have no thoughts about that yet. But we do see the Saturday, but then we have our part-time students in the faculty, and they are financially a bit more, I'd say that they're more further than financially more stable than our students that come from Monday till Friday. Again, price seems to matter, but now it's the true price gap that actually influences the chance that people are willing to pay the true price. And then very specifically, the true price gap that is between 10 and 20 cents. But as said, we still have to see if this also holds when we have the data for 12 weeks and then dive into that. We also saw that the chances that people are willing to pay the true price is a bit higher for the vegan products compared to the non-vegan products. We didn't see that with the coffees, but we still have to take out the coffees in the restaurant to see if that is indeed for the snacks or the sandwiches and compare if that differs between those two, and also the product type, the sandwich and the snacks. The chances are higher that people are willing to pay the true price than coffee in the restaurant. But the coffee in the restaurant comes from a machine. That's different than from the espresso bar where Roberto is making the coffee. So these are very, very first insights, and it differs between the two locations. That we expected that because we talked about that they look very different type of products, different type of interaction. So this is what I already said. We call it a fast decision and the more time to decide context. So we're going to work with that and see in the results if that indeed is the case. We had some students who did qualitative and quantitative research throughout the experiment, so we will also look at their interviews and their surveys to see what they gathered in data and to compare it with what we find. Price seems to matter, but we're going to dive into that because we controlled for the retail price and the true price gap, but not yet for the true price itself. So we need to check that. Product seems to matter, and we also see that because it's also an interesting slide. Here we have a breakdown per product, and to see how this differs per product. And you can see that the people drinking the cappuccino with the oat milk or the coconut milk, they are pretty okay with paying the true price. But if you compare that to the espresso, the small espresso, that is only 1%. So there's a huge difference between that. But we have quite a large data set, so we can dive into this deeper once we have all the data and explore that a bit further. So that's the plan. We also do another experiment via survey, maybe also on a different location, where there's which is at the communication bureau here in Amsterdam, where they actually order their lunch via an app, which is a very different way of communicating than we had to do with banners and price tags and instructing the people working at our campus. And Karine is now also showing some experiments that she did on this topic. And if you have any suggestions, the things we should control for, things we should dive into, please let us know. Thank you.
Nice presentation of the field experiment. I will follow up because in addition to the field experiment, we also ran some studies in the lab, and those were inspired by the master thesis that I supervised with a student, where we basically, a little bit like Maurits said, uncovered that the information part is what matters to the consumer, right? So a lot of consumers feel like they don't trust the concept of true pricing, especially if there's very little information given. So we thought, our initial thought was, okay, how can we increase the trust? And in the literature, transparency, full transparency, information transparency is known to be a key to consumer trust. So what we basically did, we replicated the field experiment in a lab setting, online lab setting, with two types of products. We had a study where we had just had a croissant, and the second study was chocolate. So much more controlled, much more focused on one product. That really helped us disentangle what type of information transparency is key to people's behaviors. And what we found, I have a small overview of the slides, is a little bit like the results in the espresso bar. We found that all of the three partition pricing conditions, so where we just communicated the true price gap, social and environmental costs, and then the overall detailed split, where we also give people the information about what the social and environmental costs, what they're made up of. All of them had a positive effect on the willingness to pay the true price in the experiments, but also on consumer trust and perceived transparency. And what we found is that it is indeed the consumer trust and transparency element that mediates the effect on the willingness to pay. What we did not expect was that all three conditions would perform equally well. So as Xiaoxia said in the beginning, we thought, okay, there might be a sweet spot and we might see a U-shaped relationship, but that was indeed not the case. The willingness to pay the true price here is slightly highest when we have the type of costs, but did not significantly differ by that condition, but the consolidated price was by far the lowest one. And what was interesting is we had a quite steep increase from 31.2% to 48.8% of consumers willing to pay the true price if they get the information, and that's mostly driven by increased perceptions of transparency and trust. The same happened so we have it in the chocolate context. We measured willingness of the true price in the second study slightly differently. We measured the likelihood of paying the true price, so not the yes or no question, but on a scale, and we see very similar results here as well. Yes. Yes. It was not incentive compatible measurements, just the willingness to pay the true price. Another thing that we think might matter when it comes to true pricing and consumers' acceptance to true pricing is the type of product that you actually price. We know that there's some products, and we ran a couple of pre-tests to kind of confirm this hunch. Some products are associated with externalities more than others. So for example, in the case of chocolate, consumers are usually expecting, or they know that chocolate is a product that has externalities. It's usually in connection with the manufacturing and also the shipping and all the conditions. So consumers are a little bit more educated about what's happening with a product like coffee or chocolate, but not so much with a croissant. So who thinks of a true price when it comes to a croissant or a sandwich? It's not something that's communicated widely and that consumers think about. So we see with products where consumers already expect a true price, or at least that's one of our assumptions, and that we want to test in further studies, where consumers expect to pay a true price, that the transparency information will help even more so, because it pushes it. And I think this is what we are doing in the next experiment, where we also vary the type of products based on their expectations of consumers' expectancies towards true pricing. Yes. And yeah, that was it. Some preliminary results from us. If you have further questions, yes?
If you go back to the different kind of communication here, which one was then most beneficial?
So in terms of willingness to pay the true price, the last one, the one with the highest degree of information, performed best when it came to the willingness to pay the true price. And in the second one, it was the same, but the three didn't significantly differ from each other. So statistically, it didn't make any difference whether you communicate the true price gap or you give more information, which was also unexpected for us. Yeah. But again, as Xiaoxia said, it really might depend on the context, on the time that consumers have to take in the information, you know. In the espresso bar, you're standing in line a little bit longer, you have more time to really deal with the information, whereas in other contexts you might grab something and then you might feel overwhelmed. So this is also something we try to disentangle in future studies.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I would be very curious to hear what subjects in your experiment believe others will do. I guess you haven't asked, but I would be super interested in what they
asked,
think.
but that's a really, really good comment.
That's it.
Yeah, let's keep that in mind. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I have two suggestions or maybe ideas about the first research, really amazing research. Congratulations. The second condition was most popular in the second test, and maybe the red color has something to do with it. Because I teach neuromarketing, and we're all about
attention.
visual
Yeah.
influence
Yes.
and stopping power of colors, and so maybe that's something. And
point.
to add to the comment of the lady here in the front, I would really be interested in how Cialdini principles would help here in communicating.
So social norms, basically.
Yeah, social norms, but
influence.
also the if I pay more, because now the framing is very negative. It's about social costs and costs and costs. But what if you frame it into if you pay extra, you might be contributing to something beautiful, like beautiful world, green world, justified world.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of research can be done in that field, like how do we frame the extra money you pay as positive results that you can contribute to.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And latching on to the thing that you said about social norms, there was one additional manipulation in the master thesis that I supervised, where she looked into whether consumers know that it's just one company or one product doing true pricing, or whether all the other companies in the supermarket context do the same. And what we saw, that the willingness to pay the true price indeed increased with more normative acceptance of true pricing as a concept. So that would speak, you just need one brand who starts it, but as it kind of progresses and grows, consumers might perceive it as more normative, and whatever is more normative, you go for it. So that's definitely a case for that, yes.
Yeah, if I can add, because we also ran a survey, I think it was the end of the year, where and we still have to present results for that, where we combined framing the true price, if you explain it positively versus negatively, so in wording. And we also checked for whether you ask, we called it a donation or making an extra payment. And we varied in conditions there and also in price. And we actually, with David, working on the results for that, so we hopefully will be able to share that very soon. So I think that also might be in addition. And also with the next experiment, if it's possible to do it via an app, you take away the context of maybe social pressure. Because if you're standing in line, you also might feel that you have to say yes, because the people around you can hear what you say. But if you order via an app, it's a very, very individual decision. No one can see it. So we're also very interested to see what will happen then. Yeah.
Yes, especially for the first study, I was wondering, what are you doing with the extra profits? And are the consumers aware of what you are allocating it to?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question, which we talked over with Maurits before we started how to do that. Because when you do an experiment, it's very difficult. Like Supermarket Aanzet, they really are able to, if you pay for a tomato, it goes back to the people that have grown the tomato. And they can work on making the supply chain more sustainable and lowering the true price gap. But when you do an experiment for a few months, that's not very possible. So we talked about it a lot, and we chose Solidaridad as the group where the money goes to, and we explicitly communicated about it through everything where we communicated. It said it goes 100% to Solidaridad, and we had stickers of them and flyers, and they were there at the opening. And also to enhance the trust on the calculations, we were allowed to use the True Price logo because they make the calculations. That was also a way to make sure that people don't question that part. But that's a very, very challenging part, and I know that True Price does a lot of research on that as well, because that's also something you need to explain to the consumer, which is a challenge in that short amount of time that you have. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So it's a bit of a similar question. Because from the way you analyze the results, I understand that you see this true pricing primarily as a fundraising tool to make people. So the sort of the socially desired action that people can take is to pay the true price, right? Did you also consider to check if this has an influence on the consumer choice people make? So did they sort of decide not to buy the animal-based product and go for the plant-based instead, or?
Yeah, we can do that. We are going to do that. So I don't have that insight yet, but with the data that we have, we can make comparisons to previous periods to see if the buying behavior changes, because that's one of the goals as well of goals. when you give this very transparent information, what does that to the consumer in their decision, not just about paying, but also choosing which product to buy. But that's something we do have the data, but we didn't look at it yet. But we will, yes.
Thank you all. I think the consumer benefit needs more care. Doing good and the long-term benefits for planet Earth may not be just good enough. And I was inspired by Maurits and the croquette. So really the true pricing could also be the trade-off. Are you buying a cheaper vegetable croquette or a meat-based, high-quality, whatever you call it, a premium product?
Yeah.
And then the price trade-off doesn't become true pricing is more expensive, but really you're closer to the full cost, the true accounting that has been carried out. So positioning true pricing as a premium you pay to do good outside Amsterdam, outside the academic world, I have big doubts. I would like to press for more trade-off tests to really see whether price differences can make a difference, where meat becomes more expensive than non-meat products, etc., etc.
No, fully agree in that. I know they did some lab studies with that and do the true price as a default option. And then you see very different results. Our caterer was not up to that suggestion, so it depends on how far the caterer is in adopting true pricing. But we are now talking to a caterer who is thinking about doing that. That makes a difference. But you have to get everyone on board. So also the company where you do the testing and the caterer, they all have to agree on doing that. But for sure that helps. And also we tested now very much the price tag, but we did not communicate very emotional about true pricing. And of course you can do things with that as well, which will influence choices as well. But fully agree that it should be the default option, yeah, preferably. Or the only option.
Hi, yeah, I have a question whether you tested or looked at separating learning about true pricing and actually paying the true price in the sense of also an implementation of true pricing, whether the effects might be stronger if I have my preconceptions when I think about normal prices, right? I know kind of how they come about, and then I'm willing to pay them. So in the sense of, okay, explain everything, I explain all the breakdowns, and then show you a simplification, because in what you're also expecting with the U-shape, right, you would say there's some sort of simplicity that works well, but also people need the information. So just curious whether you have thought about this or, yeah.
Just to make sure I understand your question correctly. So you wanted to like pre-test that before, or?
No, whether you split basically the process, right? So
yeah.
With normal prices, I know how the price comes about, and then I just see the price. Right? Instead of saying, okay, the effect comes from, in the more elaborate conditions, here's all the information and then you pay, instead of splitting this up to kind of explore this U-shape that you expect.
Ah, okay, no, we didn't consider that, so no. But it's a good suggestion, so thank you. Yeah, but we didn't do that, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question for Maurits, actually. Yeah, at a certain point you have a company gaining more money, because of the true price, and what do they actually do with that price, and how far do their efforts reach of minimizing the external effects in other parts of the world?
Congratulations for your experiment. I have a question regarding the willingness of the catering service to continue with true price after the experiment. Is it something that they are actually interested in continuing?
Oh, I see the facility manager smiling now. Now, our current caterer is not that interested in true pricing, so we don't think they will do that. But we started a project within our university together with many colleagues also from the nutrition part doing research on that, and on all kinds of topics related to food. And True Price is part of that. And we actually want to do research and inform our board better when they choose a new caterer. So we hopefully in the future, True Price is one of the indicators when they write out the new tender for new caterers to apply to. So
why there was not enough incentive to adopt it?
for the current caterer, well, I can't speak for them. I don't think that's correctly to do, but they indicate that they are not that interested. They have been part of numerous researches on that, but I don't think that's one of their. They don't yet believe in it fully. But as other caterers are moving forward, like Vermaat, we do hope they will follow as well. I hope there will be. I think Maurits stressed that as well. There will be a point that there's no turning back to it. So everyone basically has to do it because it's going to be normal. And well, let's hope that the Vermaat, who is now the front runner, I think, and some of them are following Vermaat already, that will help to get them all on board. But I think all caterers are pretty aware now of the true pricing concept. So that's a good thing. And then I will go to Ariane because she has had her hand up a few times. So.
Okay, thank you. Tim Mazajcik, researcher at In Holland in Haarlem. Compliments on the research, and I especially think that the combination of proving in a lab session and in practice the same effect is very valuable. About the experiment in the canteen, I was just wondering, the people at the cash register, they are part of your experiment. So what did you do to control for their behavior, that they do everything in the same way the whole time? Thank you.
Well, that's one of the challenging factors in our research, which we also experienced when we were doing it, because we gave them instructions and we thought it was very easy, very clear. But in practice, of course, you understand, that's why you asked the question, right? It doesn't work that way. So when it was busy, they sometimes forgot to ask the question. Sometimes they just thought, oh, that person paid before, so we'll do it now. And then we heard later that person complained, like, well, they don't even ask me anymore. So we don't know yet how to control for it statistically, but it will be definitely mentioned in our limitations of our study. And that's why we're also very happy that the follow-up field experiment might be with an app, but it also accounts for that part. But that's indeed a challenging part, and I think in the beginning we thought about it too easily, in all honesty. And now working with it and learning while you're doing the experiment, we had to go back to them a couple of times, yeah.
My question was in line with this. How did you manage on the cash? Did you put an extra button for?
Yes. Yeah. So that was actually very good, well managed by our caterers. So they had the cash register. They added extra buttons to it, and that's why we can very clearly see in the data per transaction, but also per product, where the true price was paid. And
what
gap.
we did is because they forgot it. That's true.
Yeah.
If you put the coffee, then in the same screen you have to add, do you want to pay the true price? And then no or yes.
So they have to click it.
Yeah,
that would have been good. Yeah.
But Maarten also has icing, so maybe he can tell later how he does it.
Yeah, because the practical part is indeed more challenging than we thought at first. Yeah, fully agree.
Time for, I would suggest we have a little break, 10 minutes?
10 minutes, yes.
Yeah, 10 minutes, and then we continue with the research insights by Eva. Yeah. So if everyone would like to get back to their seats, thank you so much. We want to continue our presentations. We have another research presentation, and then Martin Reinings from the Onset will share some practical insights on how true pricing works in that supermarket. So Eva, would you like to come on stage? You have a clicker here. Okay. And let's wait until everybody's back, and then...
Yeah. So thanks very much for this opportunity. Am I close enough to the mic? Yeah. Yes, that's working. So what I'm going to do is to tell you about an experimental approach of the Ministry of Agriculture. And it's actually a project that was finished 2 years ago. So the running time was from 2020 to 2022. So it's not completely fresh results, but I think some of them will still might inspire new things. So my name is Eva van den Broek. I'm a sort of an in-between policy and academics. I'm a behavioral economist. I used to, so I did my PhD here at UvA, at behavioral economics, and then went on to basically do research for ministries and municipalities. And this is one of the bigger projects that we've been doing at Behavioral Insights over the previous couple of years. The main question of the ministry was, how do people react to this new concept of true pricing? How does this work in practice? So what do people do when you actually confront them with the true price? So you just give them the information, which is one of the questions that was also previously already gone into. Versus, what do people do when you charge them the real price? And of course, people react very differently to these two things. And of course, as was said by Maurits already, it's not only the consumers that react to these computations, these insights into where are the hotspots in the value chain. It's also retail, it's also chain partners, and of course it starts all at the producer level, so at the farmer or whatever you like. Now the first question is, why would you experiment with these things? Why don't we just, once we've got this information, implement it? Well, there's good reasons for that. One is that economists, and many of the people working at the Ministry of Agriculture are economists, actually are really bad at predicting what will happen. So as soon as there's behavior involved, predictions tend to go in lots of different directions. I'll try your predictive capacities later on to see whether you can predict what came out of our experiment. So this is something that a Nobel Prize economist actually said in the Dutch newspaper, the NRC. The economists are just really, really bad at making predictions. And the second reason why we started setting up such an experimental program at the ministry is that it's very hard to say at which stage of, say, institutionalization this true pricing methodology and idea and concept is at the moment. So when we started lobbying for this, it was, that's like 5, 6, 7 years ago already. There were only a couple of pilot projects, innovation, of course, True Price, the foundation and the company were there. But there were only a couple of people interested in playing with it in real life, in the field. And actually, at the moment that the program started, there were a couple of first movers doing it, but it was not like there was some organization that was, well, next to True Price, that was actually coordinating these experiments. And that is what the ministry was trying to set up, some kind of a local community of practice within the Netherlands, where people, companies, researchers would exchange thoughts and findings. I think that's 2 really good reasons, actually, to experiment. What they specifically asked was, how do consumers react? So they started at the consumer level, for sure. And how does buying behavior change when you display the true price versus when true price is being charged to consumers? And of course, there's lots of different questions that are behind that. There's like, how do we close this true price gap that Maurits was talking about? And there's all these super interesting things for a behavioral economist like me coming into play. It's like we just said, it's social norms, it's defaults, it's what do you think the others are doing? It's trust, of course. Where do you think the money is going? Remediation questions. There's things like avoidance behavior. There's whole streams in the literature that go into how people actually avoid negative information that says something about what they should be doing on these kind of topics. So it's a very interesting topic, and that's that's my personal motivation, I guess, to do research on these things. It's just bloody interesting what will happen if we manage to charge the true price. And luckily what we got from the Ministry of Agriculture was a bag of money, basically. Not so much, but still a bag of money. And they appointed me and someone else, Jan-Paul van Soest, as some kind of a matchmaker between people from the fields, academics, and so basically what they said was you have to set up consortia that consist of 2 different firms within the value chain of a product and some kind of a knowledge institute, so be that a university or something else. And that resulted in many people, many companies starting to experiment in a not very structured way with these tiny amounts of subsidy. But at least there were all these kind of small experimental pilot projects starting up across the value chain that had to do something with making consumers aware of the true price. Now, let me take one break to do something to the PowerPoint because it's running ahead of me and that makes me kind of nervous, especially since I want to test you on predicting the results. Let me see.
Should we close our eyes?
Yeah, wait. Not yet. There zit ergens. Oh yeah, that's correct. Thanks. So I'll take questions in the meantime. No. Sorry for this, but this will be worth it. Yeah. So, yes, now I'm in total control, but I lost you, of course, yes. Please do. Yeah. Yeah, compulsory. But of course, there's been different companies that tried different things. So I'll give you a quick overview of that. Thanks. Yeah. Other questions so far? Let me go over that and let me show you the number of pilots that we ran was basically these kind of things, and we gathered them across topics. So there were area-based projects, producer, so that think of farmer-based projects, contract-based projects, brands, and projects that focus really on the consumer. And we did it across different settings. So there's catering, like Xiaoqi and Carina were talking about. We had a web shop that's actually very close to what Carina has been doing. We had a couple of supermarket projects where Maarten will tell you something about later on. And there was Horeca, which you'll also go into later on. And I'll just give you a very quick overview of a couple of interesting results, and then I'll go into one a bit more extensively, one that I like best. So there's one on contracts and supermarkets. Let me show you the coolest one, or the one that I thought was the most interesting from that area of research. There's this small international NGO that's called Onze Markt. And what they are doing is they basically turn upside down the complete business model of supermarkets. What they said was, we're not going to charge something extra in the supermarket for a product that's made in a more sustainable way, what we do is we're going to source information from our community of consumers. We're going to ask them, what is your willingness to pay for a couple of different indicators for sustainability, say for the bag that the potatoes is in, for the way that the pesticides are used, for the way that the land use is going to take care or is going to be taken care of. And what they found was a number of cents per sustainability indicator. They picked one of that, went to a couple of potato farmers and said, hey, can you actually produce potatoes? We will pay you 13 cents more for this specific potato with these specific ways of using less pesticides. And then we know that there's a willingness to pay among consumers for this specific bag of potatoes. And with that farmer and the offer from the consumers, they went to the supermarket to say, hey, actually, look what we found you, a potential market for a new potato. So it's really the other way than it works usually in supermarkets. And they do so in different countries as well. There's a French and a German version of it. It seems to work to some extent. They have been scaling up. They've been doing this for more different kinds of product lines. However, they went bankrupt. But that's what subsidies are for. You can't predict what's going to work and what's not going to work. Here, the potato case did seem to work. So it's actually, yeah, I'm very sad that this one didn't work out. I think we can learn something from it. Then, in the corner of the consumer Horeca studies, there's of course Ariane's example. She'll talk about that. There's a very nice one that I wanted to show. So in the corner of the contracts for caterers, because actually for catering, so there's this whole report that was made. I'll send it on to you. That was really on how do you describe a contract as a facilitation manager for caterers that do want to take into account the true pricing and the true cost accounting. The good thing about caterers is that they have a sort of a closed out-of-home setting. So for consumer, everything within that canteen can be true priced or not. And of course, what you charge a true price for, so the extra money that you're charging from the consumer doesn't have to go to that specific product, because there's this layer in between, the caterer, that can do with the money whatever they like, as long as it's used for making things more sustainable. So this extra layer in these contracts offers lots of possibilities, lots of potential, actually. So that was another outcome of the program. And then there was one in the supermarkets that focused on how do you make a brand that is really focused on true pricing. So how do you turn that knowledge into a brand that's understandable for consumers, which is also really cool to know. Actually, there has been many in the area of canteens and catering, focusing on consumers, students, and lecturers mostly, but also in banks and at other places. So, well, you must know about these, of course. What they, for instance, tried was to see differences between framing things as a meat tax or actually as a tax exemption for vegetables, and framing these things in different ways, and actually cumulative differences in tax gave, again, very surprising results. Consumers do pay attention to how you frame it. And there were actually the meat tax didn't work as well as they thought, but you'd have to go into their report to understand the exact results from them. The one that I wanted to go into is a collaboration where we sort of set up an online store and sold actual consumers, so real existing people with real money, specific kinds of tea. There was a collaboration between many partners. I was working at Utrecht University at the time then. Center Data did all the surveys around it. Wageningen University was involved in setting up the shops and all that, and Amsterdam UMC was also involved. And basically what we tried to do was set up a real tea shop, let people buy the tea of their preference within the tea shop. And of course, online it's very easy to experiment, to make different setups of the store. What we did was we displayed in the best way that we could find, so that was the center data, survey data, how do you present in a reliable and understandable way to consumers what the true price is, what the externalities are, and why they have to pay for it. We took the best way that we found there. That was actually pretty close to what True Price, the company, was already doing. And we ensured that the price gap for tea was the real, as True Price computed it, the real price gap. So there was like a 15 cents price gap on a €1.30 amount of tea. So we adjusted the amount of tea to get to workable setup. We showed them different kinds of tea with different price gaps, of course. And what we were looking at was, as was suggested in the audience before, not just how many people would be willing to pay the price, dependent on the condition, but also whether people would choose something else, depending on the condition. Basically, what we varied was an idea of a student of mine who's now at the European Commission, working there at the Behavioral Insights team. She said, what you want to see is how much the default value is of influence to what people choose. So what we showed people, 1/3 of the people, was we showed them the retail price, we explained them about the true price, and we said, here's the retail price, would you be willing to pay extra? And then another group, another third, was we showed them the true price, so these 15 cents on average more, and we asked them, would you be willing to pay that, or would you actually prefer to use your money for something else and downgrade to the retail price? And they would get the money back, sent back to their account, so it's real incentives and all that. And then was this third group. The third group was the in-between group, so they could, basically they had this forced choice. They had to go up or down to pay for the true price or to pay the retail price, but to do so consciously. They had to make a conscious choice. So they could select the price without there being a clear preference inside. So now, this is the question to you, basically, and to see whether your predictive capabilities, what would you think? And of course, we don't just ask you. I asked this to a bunch of academics in behavioral research. I asked this to a couple of the field experts, so that's the category managers from supermarkets and all that. And I ask it to the policymakers, because what we want to see is that policymakers get an instinct for what would work in these kind of things. But now I'm asking you, so given that the default retail price is displayed, so that's close to basically what Albert Heijn did with their cappuccino, that is somewhat close to the experiment of Xiaoqi and Karina, I think. What do you think the percentage of people was that upgraded to the true price? Doing. So they were actually doing it. It was their own money, and they would have to pay this 15 cents from their own bank account. How many people would do that? From 100 people? 5? 10? We're talking about 15 euro cents per package of coffee or tea. And they could buy like up to 3 or 4 packages of coffee, so it wouldn't be too much. Yeah. Yeah, so it's a very narrow, of course, experiment. Yeah. So we've got 10%. Anyone offering more? 15, 12? Not bad. This is what, so 25% is what on average the policymakers and the experts thought. So you're a bit more concerned, but all right. So this is not results yet, right? This is prediction market. This is what, so what do you think if the default was a true price? It would go up, right? Because people infer social norms. They think, yes, we would. Take it away, well, yeah, you would have to lower the price and you would indeed not pay it. Yeah. And opt out. So a bit higher, I guess, but how much would you say? 40? 50, 60? So people guessed on average 60%, so that's pretty much aligned. And then, of course, if there were a forced choice, it would be somewhere in the middle, right? Yeah, that's what people guessed. People guessed online, so they weren't influenced by what other people said. Now, this is where the real results are coming in. So he had, like, I think, 240 people who were involved in the experiment. There was representative group, the people from all backgrounds. So for the default setting, actually the answer was pretty close to what people expected. Pretty close to what Albert Heijn found, pretty close to what you found. 15 to 20% is what people are willing, that's the dark green consumers basically, the ones that are drinking the oat milk, the ones that are opting for, the wokies, that's it. Now what do you think the true price did? Because it's basically, for an economist, a traditional economist, it's exactly the same question, right? Plus or minus, it's the same. What do you think what happened? Yeah, much, much more than we expected. So people have this intuition that the default matters a lot, but our intuition doesn't go far enough. And even in the forced choice, when it's not clear what the default is, even that was much higher than in the default retail price, in a low default setting. So I think our intuitions are more or less correct, so are yours, but I think the effects are way more pronounced than we think. And I think that has really big consequences, both for retailers as well as for policymakers. Because this means that it's very hard for one retailer or one market party to experiment with these kind of things and to actually find a result that's not disappointing, right? So, to conclude, we answered by telling the Ministry of Agriculture, because we had this big group with experts, with field experts, with people that had been playing with it, that had been sharing their results, and that are still very much into true pricing. We told them, yes, there's loads of interest among consumers and along the value chain. Consumers very much appreciate shops and brands and products that are going through the effort of computing true prices. They want to know, actually. However, if you just tell them the true price between, say, apples and mangoes, people tend to go to the product that should have a higher price, namely the mango, because the true price gap is bigger. Because if you're not charging it to them, it feels like it's on sale, right? Oh, I should be paying more for the mango because it's actually very exotic and it comes from a long way. But no one's paying it and I don't have to pay it. So let me go for that because it might turn out more expensive in the long run. The willingness to pay is hard to measure because of these weird default effects. Brands trust matter a lot, standards matter a lot. Sales depend very much on the share of the products in the supermarket. So for instance, if you're looking at milk, the amount of organic milk, the amount that's displayed in a shop, very much tells consumers what's normal to pay. And if there's lots of organic milk that's only a couple of cents more expensive than the regular milk, then people might go for the organic milk. They do, actually, but it depends on how much is on display. Supermarkets know that, of course, but brands really can't influence that. That's what supermarkets decide on. And that, again, sort of lowers the chance that true price efforts of specific brands would pop out in a supermarket. So catering contracts is a really good way to start, because there we don't have this problem. Remediation is what everyone asks about, like you here in the room, but also consumers want to know, why do I have to pay more to the worse producers? And that's a very counterintuitive thought. I think room for government interventions. And basically what we concluded from this whole experimentation project was individual market parties experimenting with this charging. So basically what Albert Heijn does doesn't really increase the chance that more parties will do this. There's these dark green catering brands, so the brands that are really there for the consumers that want to pay more. Yeah, they are trying, they're playing with it, and that's what we see here. But actually, although consumers value it, although consumers have the intention to pay for it, there's this gap between intention and action, and that's where we are right now. Citizens want to pay for it. Consumers don't pay for it when they're at the cashier. So brands battle basically against this status quo. And that's very hard for individual frontrunners to outrun this 15% of sales. So we have to do something else. So this is government intervention work, I think. That's my plea. So what we know, final slide, takeaways for policy. Market leaders will call at some point, when they're done experimenting, they will call for transparency, for regulated transparency, I think. There'll be sectoral strategies, so say, for all the fruit and veggies, or for all the, I don't know what, cotton. There'll be extra legal standards, more of them, and ultimately there will be regulation, I think. And that's also what you see in practice. And I think through pricing does provide a very tangible link with many other aspects, things like the protein transition, all these kind of things, because it's so tangible and so quantifiable. And I think that's a beautiful thing about true pricing. I think there's two ways to close the gap. Transparency, which you see happening luckily, and a sort of a patchwork of different EU regulations like meat taxes and these kind of things. I'm very curious where we'll be in a couple of years, actually. And I think these kind of events really contribute to awareness and to people thinking about it in a critical way. Please ask me more, because there's many of these things. I can, if you want, I can send all the things that I mentioned in a link or so, or come to me afterwards if you have questions about it. Thanks a lot. I think you were a very good predicting audience. That can also be about one of the other experiments. Yeah.
Hello. Thank you. Of course, the particular last experiment is of course super fascinating, also relating back to what has been found at the HVA. So I was wondering, I think the HVA experiment, across all products, 6% of people actively chose to pay the true price. From you, or did
no, in the first, I think it was a bit more, right?
Well, I think if you look at it from a product perspective, with the average, it was 6%.
Okay.
Cappuccino was almost twice.
Okay. Anyway, so basically, my question to you was, sort of, what do you take away from let's say, what is 6%, 30%, at least the minority? What is the sort of, what do you take away from that number? What does that tell us in light of your findings?
I think that fits to the extent that we see it's a subgroup that's willing to pay, especially when they first learn about it. I think it might be higher in the specific among the specific audience that you chose, of course. And there's lots of social pressure in such a bar. However, you consistently find across all these experiments something like 5 to 15% of people who are actively on their own willing to pay in practice. However, if you ask people, would you want your supermarket to implement this, and would you still continue going to that supermarket? Of course, that's only, again, asking about intentions. 60, 70% of the people say, yes, I would completely endorse my supermarket to do that. This is the world I want to live in. It's just not the case that I want to be the only weirdo that's paying for it and the rest of my friends not. So this is basically the emotion that's behind it, I think. Yeah. That's what I'm taking from it. And that means that individual brands will have a hard time.
Yeah, so you showed that if you make it a default, then a lot more people choose that option. Did you also check whether people would come back? So what is the perception? Maybe they say, okay, well, I just pay it. But actually say, next time I will go somewhere else because I actually don't want to pay this, or it's more expensive.
Yes, we did ask people here. Now, this was a very limited experiment because they knew, of course, that this is not the default in real life, so that dampened the results, I think. And at the same moment, this was not their complete basket of a month of stuff that they needed to pay for food. So it was a tiny amount, and people are more willing to play with that, of course. We asked them, would you come back? What do you think of it? And they were actually really positive, more than 50% of them. I didn't check how that depended on what treatment they were in. I would actually be interested in seeing whether people who did pay, whether they thought about it or not, were more positive than the people who did not pay. So it's a nice question, but I don't remember completely. Yeah.
Do you think the results can be? Oh, sorry. Do you think the results can be? Can you replicate them in other domains of food, like commodity food, like potatoes and apples, or?
So the most we know is actually from Maarten's store, I think, and there's been other stores that have been playing with it. Yes, you do see, also from survey research, but also from field research, you do see differences across categories. I would say, like in your findings, that it depends very much on, say, chocolate, coffee, these kind of fair trade areas. That's where people are already used to thinking about these things. So they would believe that other people are more willing to pay, and therefore they themselves would be willing to pay more. So I think that's one defining feature of what commodity does what into terms of willingness to pay. Yeah, it does replicate though, in general. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let me give the floor to someone else. Thank you very much.
Nou, welkom allemaal. Dank jullie voor de uitnodiging. Ik wil eerst even kijken hoeveel klanten hier zitten. Ik heb geteld eventjes, 40 mensen. Wie woont er een kilometer van het Museumplein, de Marie Heinekenplein? Nou, dat valt even tegen. Dus dat zijn helemaal geen klanten. Ik krijg ook al niet betaald voor deze lezing. Wie woont er eigenlijk in Amsterdam? Oh, sorry, I will do it in English. Who lives close to the Museum Square or the Marie Heineken Square? One person. So that's one consumer spending 30 euros a week. That's not bad at all. Who lives in Amsterdam? Oh, that's practice what you preach. So 10 consumers I have to get in my supermarket, the aanzet close to the Museum Square. Well, I will. Can do something for themselves? Or? Well, we don't have an online shop, but there are more possibilities. You have seen it comes in the catering, so we will conquer from a lot of positive energy the Netherlands. But the good thing, I will react first to a few things from Maurits. He said something about the politics. Don't worry about the politics. True pricing will come from business. So there are a few business persons here here gathering, and maybe too much researchers. Who's in business? Yeah. Well, at least some. So we can change it. True pricing is a game changer. And why we are asking people the true price. It's not voluntary that we ask people the true price. So you have to pay the true price at our store. And we have good results. We are growing faster than the market. So I'm Maarten Reinings. I'm a social entrepreneur. I did the banana company, Agrofair. In 5 years, we were in 14 countries selling organic and organic fair trade bananas. And I was heading the Natuurwinkel, which is currently Ecoplaza and Odin Shops, which is a franchise organization. And I have just one shop now. And why have one shop? Because of this one shop will change the retail world. And Albert Heijn, who did it in 3 shops, will not change. They will wait till another retailer in the Netherlands will start with true pricing. And this retailer will come. Don't worry. It will be a family company, and Albert Heijn will follow this example. So I'm preparing that, and it's a hard job, I can tell you. It's far from easy. But anyway, I show you something what we are doing. This shop exists from 81 in the pipe, when it was difficult to get organic milk delivered to your shop, and which is now quite normal. So that was 45 years, no, little less, years ago. And so in that time period, a lot have been changed. And if we think about 30, 40 years from now, true pricing will be reality. We were the first shop. Well, it says nothing. We are a very small shop, but very small. It starts always with small initiatives. We did 6 projects with Eva. We wrote 6 projects which Eva was talking about. So Vermaat was one of our childs. I wrote a project with somebody else, and they started doing true pricing, and a lot will follow. So we try to support some research. I will tell a little bit about that. That's the most difficult. How to reduce the hidden cost on farm level, because that's important. Finally, that's the most important. How we can reduce the price in our shop. Because finally, after 10 years, I want to be cheaper. Organic, if the government decided the pricing will be the standard, I want to be cheaper. So I have to lower the hidden cost every year. And this is a very difficult process. So we have only 4 hidden costs we took to display. There are far more, which you have heard about. And we make it very simple. We did quite some research on how we would display it on our vegetables. We do it on vegetables, we do it on bread, and we starting now with dry groceries. So we try to have somewhere at the end of the year 20% of our products for the true price. And 20% gives 80% of the turnover, and we have the same amount of products which a normal Albert Heijn of Coop has. That is about 7,000-8,000 products on the shelf. So we have underpayment, climate tax, land use, and water use. So this price, so if you look to the bananas, the 279, the consumer have to pay 294 for a kg of bananas. And what I heard from somebody, we let consumers pay, but we do also actually a quite big banana project with the 2 biggest wholesalers in the Netherlands, Udea and Odin, for organic produce. And we try not to let pay the consumer for the hidden costs, and we find the money in the chain. So that's actually, and we try to lower the footprint at farmer level, and from that point, and use the money which we save for tackling the problem, which is an interesting other way of doing it, and which consumers much more like, of course. What kind of projects we are doing to reduce hidden costs? One of the speakers thought, if you go to the aanzet, you pay the hidden cost for the tomato, and the hidden cost from the tomato goes back to the farmer who produced the tomatoes. Well, this is the ideal world. Currently, we can't do that. So what we do is the consumer sees what he pays on his receipt when he goes to the checkout. The exact money which he has paid for the hidden cost is coming on a screen. So he, from the trust factor, he can see that after a few seconds, what the consumer has paid is counted up by the total money of the hidden cost. And so the hidden cost, which we gathered, we currently use for a couple of projects, and we would really like to bring back the money to every farmer, but that is only possible when you have at least 10,000 euros for each product, and you can start a nice project at that farm. But that's not the case. So we take, for instance, a lot of produce from one of the farmers close to Lelystad. And at that farm we do the most experiments, and we organize every year an excursion to that farm so that people can see what we do. So they pay the money, they can go for free to Lelystad in a bus, and with other 50 interested consumers who come to our shop and see what we do, how we try to lower the social and environmental impact on that farm. And the funny thing is, you don't have to do research. You have to do research to know the exact amount which every year you can reduce the hidden cost. But if we ask a farmer, where are your hidden costs? Every farmer will know. Every farmer knows where his hidden costs are. So the main bottlenecks the farmers know. And I can tell you, farmer protests will not be there if we all were paying the true price. Our farmers are really glad that with the system which we have and how we bring back the money. So we do weather management projects, we do the big projects in Dominican Republic and Peru. And why we do this? Because it is easy if you have vegetables from a farm in Lelystad going to the Aanzet. But it is already far more complicated if you have a single product like coffee, tea, cacao, bananas, and all the chain partners which are in between. With bananas you have already 8 different chain partners about. And so it gets more complicated. And why we do it? We do it only to gain information, to gain knowledge, to learn how we can remediate. Because the Aanzet wants to share this information with other retailers, and other retailers are really interested in this information. So they often, other retailers come to my shop, and so I want to share everything. I share the data, I share that we grow faster than the market, although the people have to pay the true price, etc., etc. So just be open and transparent. Well, what I did not expect from the true price, that the Aanzet would be in all Dutch papers, in the New Yorker. The New Yorker came to our shop, I think 1.5 years ago, and every week 2-3 Americans are coming to our shop to check it. It's really unbelievable. So that gives hope and positive energy, and I always make time to guide somebody around. So all these people who come, I spend, I think, 20 hours a week on true pricing, so that's 80 hours a month, and I work 300 hours about. So that's 1/3 of my time I spent on it, and it's really worth doing. So this was my last. So and the New Yorker comes back to look into the remediation, and it's unbelievable, these kinds of paper they do on fact-checking. So these are really good papers. If they come, they fact-checked, and we make a copy of the articles, or we send it around in social media, and that will make that people believe that where they pay for, they get something for. And I think the framework, somebody was asking about the frame. I think we unburden consumers. If you fly to somewhere, and everybody here is doing, nearly everybody I think, you compensate your CO2, and you tell your friends on a party, well, I've compensated. If they say, oh, you should not fly, you say, oh, I've compensated my CO2. And then you think, okay, well, it's a nice person because he has compensated CO2. It's a little bit pity that there are 30 more hidden costs. But it is a good start. So I think consumers come to our shop because they want to be, to make shopping easy, and to say, okay, I've done good for the environment, and etc. etc. So I think it's not too difficult. See if I have any reaction to the tomatoes I've had. The long-term benefits. Somebody asked about the long-term benefits. Well, I think there in our shop you can see already something of the long-term benefits, but it's a complicated question to answer. So if anybody is interested, I can show him around. The German supermarket. I thought somebody would tell something about here, but I haven't heard something. There is a supermarket in Germany from the Rewe Group. 2,200 supermarkets have done a quite really interesting experiment on true pricing on meat, so not on the easy products. So it's really interesting. You can find a lot on the internet about it. And I think in the Netherlands also the high-end supermarket, Albert Heijn, will not do it, but the discounter will come. You will see it in a few years. Yes, the Lidl is a very good supermarket who could make the step. Yeah, I think I have the questions which I wrote down, I have at least answered. So I hope with all the research you have seen now, there is a lot moving, and it's only in a few years. And I heard that there will even be maybe a new program of the Ministry of Agriculture. So that will be really promising, because that seed money, which Eva was telling about. So we did 6 projects, or we wrote 6 projects for other partners, and that really helps. So if you want to do a project, if you want to do a research, just come at our shop. Plenty research we can do with inspiring results finally. Okay, thanks a lot. Any questions?
Ik hoorde dat je op een gegeven moment ook met verpakkingen
English.
aan... Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Ariane.
On one moment I heard you were also investigating the true price of packaging. Is that project still going on?
Yes, we have done an experiment. If you bring your own packaging, you get 10 cents back. And 40% of the consumers were taking their own packaging with them. And in 2 weeks' time, we are Dutch people, it was 90%. And we didn't want to punish the consumers, but now next year we punish consumers. If they don't have their own bag with them, or they have to pay 10 cents for a new bag.
Yeah.
And the true price, plus the true price. But you see, most people take everything loose.
You mentioned very encouragingly that you actually find the money back in the value chain. Could you elaborate a little bit? How do you make the business part work?
Actually, well, the banana project, we collect 600,000 euros to make it happen. So to make you feel that it is not that easy. So we had to find 600,000 euros before we could start. In the project, the water management project, and the biodiversity project, which we do in Lelystad, it's very easy. We just started with an imker who is going to count the bees. And we use the bees as an indicator. So we look how many bees every year are on the farm, and we look them as we use them as indicator to hire the biodiversity, because we don't want to pay so much for calculating through price how much the hidden cost goes down. So we just go to the farmer, we formulate a project, we hire an imker, and we start. So so I pay the imker for his hours he is working there. Oh, the money of the ministry was peanuts. It was just for writing 6 projects, which we got about 25,000 projects each. But what I wanted to mention was that was not for our business case. So I thought if I can do a project in the catering, it will support us with data. And there will come new people who take initiative. And Vermaat is one of the caterers, but you will see next year the biggest caterer, one of the top 3 caterers will change too, because they came to our shop and start talking, how did you do it? And I said, well, we got seed money with Vermaat together, and Vermaat has done a really good job itself. We did nothing. We just wrote a project for them to get the money and to deliver them with information so they could start. And now I'm even not more talking to them. They have their own initiative and doing their own things. But so with the hidden costs we get, or with the money we get back from our consumers, we can do without subsidy or whatever projects to get the social and environmental cost down, so to lower the footprint. And actually my promise to consumers is in 5 to 10 years, the ANZ brings for 80% of what you're buying, your footprint back to, well, 0 it will not be, but nearly 0. That's what I try to reach. Sorry, Steve was first. He gave the mic.
Thank you for this presentation, and I compliment you for all the work you do. It's nice to hear that you want to be transparent about the pricing. I had a question about the 4 aspects that with the bananas you chose. Yeah. How did you come to the decision to focus only on those 4 aspects?
Those 4 aspects were the most important and the most reliable. So you see, for instance, if you have underpayment, it's 6 cents, and it's maybe plus or minus 10%. So from research perspective, you want to have data or what they pay, what you let your consumers pay, which is quite reliable. And so we choose these ones.
Can I ask one question?
Yes,
more
of course.
question? Are you thinking to om breder te kijken naar andere aspecten, like to look at other variables, or only if in the future it's reliable?
We will look to more. If the other factors are more reliable, we will add them. But I think the most important for us now, from research perspective, is see how we can do the remediation. The remediation is very key in true pricing. If we can do the remediation well and bring down the social environmental cost, that will be okay, let's say something else. Albert Heijn has only 800 farmers. Imagine through pricing impact institute calculate all the true prices of these 800 farmers. What do you think will happen? Albert Heijn says to the last 100 farmers, well, if you don't improve, we don't take more you produce. So what is good from true pricing is that it is the system really fits. Well, maybe some people don't like I say it, but really fits in a neoliberal market, and where we live in this market. So if you are voting for for the VVD or GroenLinks, it doesn't matter. They all have true pricing in their program, and why they have. Because the total cost for the Dutch BV will be less if we do. So, is that maybe a wider answer on your question?
We will have a panel discussion
in
a minute, so this is perfect for the panel discussion.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Suggest we do maybe a very short 5-minute refreshment break and then continue with the panel discussion, and we might need to take some time from the Burl afterwards, but everybody seems to be engaged and interested, so I don't think that is a big problem. So 5 minutes and then give the word to you.
Hello. Would you please come sit down again? Have a seat. All right. So the program runs until 4. We planned an hour of borrel. We already started eating into the borrel, quite literally. I see some people having snacks, so that's good. But it does mean we need to start now, so we have a bit of time for networking and connecting and having fun at the end of the session as well. So we're going to continue with the panel discussion. So Ariana, if I see you walking this way, but I'd like to invite you to come to the stage. We have 5 more panelists. Peter van Dam, would you mind joining us? Let me see, where is Gustav? There you are. Yeah. Thijs Marti, please join us. And Maarten, if you're still interested, we would very much like to welcome you as well. Let me see. And did we have everyone now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we are complete. I'm missing someone. No. No. Okay. All right. That's feedback. I'm okay. Okay. Well, actually, I'm afraid of heights, and there's a big cliff here. So, welcome all. Thanks, of course, everyone for being here, particularly Carina and Sjoukje for organizing and leading all this. So we've heard from many people, heard from different initiatives that have played around, experimented with true pricing. We've heard from research. So, well, we know all 5 of you have interesting insights to share. So the idea now is, this mic should be shut down. Yeah? Okay. That's probably the mics interfering. So basically, I would like to invite you for, let's say, 5 minutes. Introduce yourselves a bit. Also, share any thoughts that you have on true pricing and the presentations you've seen before. And then we'll finish the round. And then it's basically up to you to respond to each other's ideas and also some questions from the room. So I will be silent as much as possible. And if it's okay with you, Gustav, I would like to start with you. So please share your thoughts.
Thank you. So my name is Gustav Haan. And so let me start by admitting that I was once a believer of this idea of true pricing. But experience has taught me that there are important objections to be made. And some of them, there's a host of objections, but some of them are really fundamental. And I would like to share my insights with you and see what you think. I work for Question Mark. We are a think tank. We're independent. And our field of work is the sustainability of the food system. And about, I think, 10 or 12 years ago, we did something very similar to this approach. We developed an app for smartphone that would enable the user to scan the barcode of a food product, any food product in the Dutch supermarket, and the app would calculate the sustainability score of that product based on a host of international databases with data on the ingredients in the product and the brand's policy and everything. So that was very, to us, it was very promising, and it didn't work at all. And there's for a number of reasons it didn't work, and I'll gladly tell you all the mistakes we made, but there were a few important observations I think that we made, and I think the second most fundamental problem with this approach of quantifying impacts and attributing those impacts to products, because that's basically what it is. So we were just one step away from monetizing those impacts. The second most fundamental problem was that by attributing the externalities of an industry to their product,
to the individual products, we were implicitly shifting the responsibility for those externalities from the industry to their consumers. And so first of all, that's unfair because the consumers didn't make the conscious decision to make all those externalities, right? They didn't choose to outsource labor to low-income countries or to, I don't know, you can fill it in. So it's unfair, but moreover, it's ineffective. And I think the best way to explain that or to illustrate that is by making you imagine. So just imagine that in the 19th century, we would not have abolished slavery, but instead we would have calculated the external costs of slavery, the social costs of slavery, and we would have attributed those costs to the products those slaves make. And we would have asked consumers to either voluntarily or compulsory contribute to a certain fund. I don't know, slavery remediation fund or anything. So I think but this is my opinion, I'm really curious to hear what you think. I think that today we would still have that fund. It would be a huge fund. So, a slavery atonement fund or something. They would have a lot of money. They would have a lot of work to do because I guess there would be a niche market for slavery-free products. There would be a slightly bigger niche market for slave-friendly products. Better slavery certified or something. And the rest of the market would just be there, so the famous Dutch slave trade would be thriving. And not only would it be thriving, also the slave owners would be immune to criticism because they would be able to say, there is no willingness to pay. There's a demand for these products. So, we gave the consumer an option and no willingness to pay. Very sorry for the slaves. So these were my thoughts this afternoon, and I think this afternoon proves, or actually it answers your question. Is it what are you calling it? Is it a game changer or a deterrent? Consumer deterrent. I think it's this afternoon makes clear that it's a consumer deterrent. Because the whole afternoon we've been talking about willingness to pay instead of moral acceptability of things. We didn't talk about the problems. We only talked about the willingness to pay of consumers. So it's exactly right, I think, what Maarten says. This fits in perfectly with a neoliberal worldview. And if you believe that neoliberalism is fit for solving the problems we have today, then I understand that you go for this option, but I don't. Sorry.
Right, thank you. So I'm thinking, Peter, perhaps you can draw a historical parallel. I'm not sure. Anyway, I don't want to put you sort of in any position. Please, can you introduce yourselves and share your thoughts on the afternoon as well?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm Peter van Dam, a historian here at the University of Amsterdam. I'm particularly interested in the issue of true pricing because I'm a historian of the fair trade movement. And the history of fair trade activism started in the 1950s about, and then evolves. And of course, I'm not going to summarize 10 years of research here in 5 minutes. But I think two things that came to the fore during that research that speak to that discussion directly, and some of the points that you raise are quite important. I think that the first one was a little surprising to a lot of people who think of fair trade mostly as something that you can buy in supermarkets, is that fair trade movement was about much more and still is about much more than buying and selling. That has always been about awareness raising, about pressuring all kinds of audiences in all kinds of different ways, and that actually the fair trade brands that you have in supermarkets now have actually all, I think, been introduced. I'm thinking of the bananas now to make sure that I'm taking, but yeah, have all been introduced as a means to raise awareness and then pressure politics and pressure companies into changing their behavior. So we really need to be thinking about when we're talking about true pricing as kind of a means of action, in what way are we using it? Is it just a way of buying and selling? And usually, actually, it isn't. So to some extent that mitigates the criticism if it is that, because I mean if it's a way of making a start and then to achieve something bigger through political influence, through changing companies, then you are in fact changing the system. So often that plays out a little differently. And I think a second point to keep in mind when we discuss this is that the fair trade movement is actually very much a post-colonial movement. So it's really reacting to the situation in the world as it is decolonizing in the 1950s. It's really addressing the fact that the trade imbalances between the North and the South need to be addressed. And one of the things that is happening right at this moment, and that is also very much part of that discussion of true pricing, is of course that we're shifting away from that worldview where true pricing is now something that we can apply. And I thought the graphs of the ANZ were really interesting because some of the products were distinctly fair trade history products, bananas, for example, but some of them are now also becoming ones that we associate with the global north. So we're really also starting to think about the economy in a different way, in the sense that we used to, up until the 1990s, usually say, well, if the market is unjust, unfair, it's mostly unfair between the north and the south, and that we're now starting to realize, no, it's actually even more unfair in that sense. It's also unfair in our own vicinity, and we need to find ways to address that. Maybe just for starters.
All right, thank you. Let's first finish the round, and then we'll finish the debate. Please do applaud, indeed. Let's stay consistent. Ariane, from True Pricing Café, amongst others.
Yeah. For me, the initiative was really about creating awareness in practice. So what Sjoukje took along was for me also an objective. So a theme which is quite complex and for consumers pretty unknown, to make that more in the field, in the working place. And we did a lot of speeches and influenced and infected others by doing, and that is one of the major objectives that we had. We closed already the system of the initiative, 2 years we did it. Took a lot of learnings, and a lot are similar. And it's also how to... the discussion is always about the consumer, to convince the consumer, or they don't trust where the money goes, or why should I pay more? And that's a very annoying discussion. But at the other hand, it needs a lot of explanation, because people don't see that, or other people, or Mother Earth, or are paying for this cost, and that we should have nature on the balance sheet and etc. And that is for me one of the most important takeouts.
Thank you. And yes, let's do that. And you said you recognize some of the lessons.
Yeah.
Can you share your thoughts?
Funny enough, if you explain, so we have been really outside with a tableau with all the externalities, 22, and then we ask people, if you have 3 fishes, where do you want to put your money, knowing that? And by doing that, it's always child labor. That's the most recognizable, and people feel bad about it. But the minute they order something online or whatever, it's totally not on top of mind. What we also saw is that when you explain the situation about true pricing, and that you're actually not paying the actual price, and where does it end up and come, then always people are willing to pay for it. So it's very important to tell that story. So, and we are still in up the hill, so we need these sessions to explain, and be the ripple, because the big mass is absolutely not yet ready.
All right, thank you. Thuis, Marty, would you like to share who you are and your thoughts on the afternoon till so far?
Yes, so let me introduce myself. I'm Thais Marty. I work as a researcher at Afonso University of Applied Sciences. And our professorship, Sustainability, Finance and Accounting, focuses on making the invisible value visible. We are not really in touch with consumers, but we are more in touch with the producers. So I don't see the lady, the researcher that did a presentation before. Eva. Yeah, so we work more with the producers and use this concept, the true pricing, to open the discussion about these aspects. And my perspective on true pricing is when we talk with these businesses, they don't really talk about true price. But true price, they do talk about the issues like the social aspects, the ecological aspects, and how they can tackle those issues. But when you bring the true cost concept, they're like, oh wow, we can monetize. So that's nice. So we can monetize and show, okay, we're doing good in comparison to another company. But then, okay, then we as a researcher with the students, we calculate that, and then they see it, but they're like, okay, what does this say? Then we go back to, okay, how can we tackle really the issues? And because if we're talking about discrimination, child labor, income gap, they're like, I don't want to be associated with those kind of issues. And I think that is the value of this concept, that you make these topics bespreekbaar. And then you can follow on. So, okay, how do we continue? Or how do we go by with our business operations? And I think that is like the most important thing with bring the true price in a calculation. Yeah.
So that relates to what Maurits earlier today talked about, true price being a crowbar or springboard.
Exactly. And the first, I don't know what it was, but the first aspect that is what we see in practice if we work when we work with companies. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So Maarten, you already have presented yourself and answered, but please go ahead and please respond to.
So of course, true price is a game changer, no doubt about that. Neoliberal economy will change, will adopt. Don't worry about that. If you look how that neoliberal economy was organized 20 years ago, you see the changes, and it will change because they will focus on efficiency. So retailers will select their farms on social environmental cost within a limited time. And you will see there will be a supermarket within 5 years, a leading supermarket in the Netherlands, who's going to introduce it, not only as a pilot, but just will do it.
How are you sure about that trend? What signals do you see? Europe or?
Well, the retail market is very good in copying. So what you do is copy it in another retailer in 3 months. It's unbelievable. If there is a new product, it's a good product, 3 months is the copy time. That Jumbo copies it from Albert Heijn or Unilever copies it from somebody else. So I see them walking my supermarket. I was retail director at True Pricing. They have now over 100 people working there. They are not doing nothing. Who knows that ABN AMRO has calculated their whole